At the family reunion, my mom pulled a chair out from under my son and said, "That seat isn't yours." He stumbled and no one helped him except me. Then I got upset and spoke up. My mom started begging, but I didn't back down. My mother pulled a chair out from under my 4-year-old son at Thanksgiving dinner. She just yanked it right there in front of 23 family members. My little boy hit the floor and not a single person moved. No one except me. But let me take a step back. If I'm going to tell this story and you really need to hear it, you have to understand the kind of family I come from. The kind where love comes with conditions, and those conditions change depending on who you are. My name is Brooke. I'm 31. I live outside Richmond, Virginia. And until about 4 months ago, I truly believed that if I just tried hard enough, if I stayed kind enough, patient enough, generous enough, my mother would eventually treat my son Oliver the same way she treats my brother's kids. I know some of you might be thinking, how long did it take you to realize that? And honestly, far too long. So, here's how my family works. My dad, Gene, is a quiet man. He's a retired electrician, 64 years old. He reads the paper every morning, drinks his coffee black, and mostly stays out of whatever drama my mother, Patrice, creates. He's not weak, I want to be clear about that. My dad is one of the strongest men I know, but he spent 37 years married to a woman who fills every room with her opinions, and over time, he stopped arguing with her about most things. He chooses his battles, and for most of my life, I wasn't one he chose. My brother Craig is 3 years older than me, 34. He has 2 kids, Hayden, who's 6, and Malene, who's 8. Craig married a woman named Jess, and the moment she joined the family, my mother acted like royalty had arrived. Jess could do no wrong. Jess made the perfect casserole. Jess dressed the kids beautifully. Jess. Then there's my sister, Deanna, 28. She lives about 10 minutes from my parents, and she is, to put it simply, my mother's echo. Whatever Patrice says, Deanna repeats. Whatever Patrice feels, Deanna expresses even louder. I love my sister, I do, but she has never had an independent opinion. If my mother said the sky was green tomorrow, Deanna would argue with a meteorologist about it. Now, as for me, I was always the one who did everything right and still ended up wrong. I graduated with honors. I started my own small business doing interior staging for real estate listings, and honestly, it grew quickly. By the time I was 29, I had saved just over $50,000, not inherited, not gifted, earned every dollar. But to my mother, that didn't matter. Craig had a wife, 2 kids, and a standard 9-to-5 job, and to Patrice, that was success. Me, I was a single mom with a little hobby. That's what she called my business, a little hobby. Even after I staged a $3 million listing in Henrico County, she still called it that. Oliver's dad isn't in the picture. I won't spend much time on that because, honestly, he doesn't deserve it. His name was Todd. He left when Oliver was 10 months old, and the last I heard, he was somewhere in Florida doing nothing useful. So it's been me and Oliver against the world since he was a baby, and I wouldn't change that. That child is my entire world. But my mom treated Oliver like he didn't really matter, like he was just background in the family story. When Craig's kids came over, she baked cookies, set up craft cables, and bought matching pajamas for Christmas photos. When Oliver came over, she would say things like, "Oh, I didn't know you were bringing him," as if I would leave my 3-year-old home alone. Do you think I didn't notice? Of course I did, every time. But I kept telling myself it would improve. I thought maybe she just needed time. Maybe if I brought Oliver around more, she would warm up. Maybe if I kept things calm, everything else would settle on its own. I was completely wrong. So let me tell you about the Thanksgiving that changed everything. My parents host every year at their house in Midlothian, a large colonial home they've had since I was 12. The entire family comes, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. My mom spends 2 weeks preparing, and I'm not exaggerating. She organizes the seating chart like a formal dinner. She irons tablecloths and places name cards at every setting. And every year, I help. I bring dishes, decorate, and arrive early to set up. This year, I got there at 9 in the morning. Oliver was with me, wearing a small button-down shirt with tiny dinosaurs on it. He looked like the most handsome little boy in Virginia. I walked in, and my mother barely acknowledged us. She was focused on arranging the centerpiece and telling Deanna where to place the
Not a dollar, not a cent. I'm not investing in a family that treats my son like he's invisible. Then I picked up Oliver's coat and walked out. I didn't say goodbye, I didn't look back. I got in the car, buckled him in, and drove away. Oliver stayed quiet the entire ride home. About 10 minutes later, he said, "Mama, why did Grandma move my chair?" I pulled over to the side of the road and sat there, holding the steering wheel, trying to stay composed in front of him because he deserved better than that. He truly did. I told him, "Sometimes adults make mistakes, but you will always have a seat next to me." He nodded and then asked, "Can we get chicken nuggets?" I laughed so much I almost cried. 4 years old and his priorities were already clear. We got the nuggets, went home, and I put him to bed. Then I sat on my kitchen floor with a cup of coffee I didn't drink and looked at my phone. 47 messages, 47 in the family group chat, and not one of them asked, "Brooke, are you okay?" or "Is Oliver all right?" Instead, it was all about how I had ruined Thanksgiving, how I had embarrassed my mom, and how I was selfish and ungrateful. Deanna even sent a voice message saying I needed to apologize before Christmas or I wouldn't be welcome. Then at 11:47 p.m., my dad called. I almost didn't answer, but it was Gene, and he doesn't call unless it matters. "Brookie," he said. That's what he's always called me. "Yeah, Dad?" "You did the right thing." 4 words and I completely broke down, because at that moment, I didn't yet know what he had seen, what he had been holding back, or what he was about to do next. And trust me, what followed explains why I say my dad is one of the strongest men I know. But I'll get to that shortly. After he said those words, I lost control. Not quiet tears, but the kind where you can barely breathe. And my dad just stayed on the phone. He didn't try to fix it or give advice, he just waited. That's who Gene is. When I calmed down, I asked, "Dad, you saw her pull that chair. Why didn't you say anything?" There was a long pause. Then he said, "I know, and I'm not proud of that, but I won't stay silent anymore." At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant. I assumed he would talk to Patrice and smooth things over like he usually does. But what he actually did in the following weeks, I never expected. Before that, though, let me explain what my mother and Deanna were doing, because they were both determined. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke up to a text from Deanna, not a call. It said, Mom was devastated. I had humiliated her. Oliver was fine, and I needed to apologize. My son was pulled off a chair by his own grandmother, and somehow I was the one at fault. Does that make sense? Because it didn't to me. I didn't respond, and that drove Deanna crazy. She thrives on back-and-forth arguments, long message exchanges she can review later with Mom. But I gave her nothing, complete silence. And honestly, that was more effective than any reply I could have sent. Over the next week, my mom called everyone in the family, except me, Craig, Deanna, my Aunt Lorraine, cousins, everyone. And the message stayed the same. Brooke overreacted. Brooke ruined Thanksgiving. Brooke is ungrateful. My Aunt Lorraine, my dad's sister, 71, who lives in Charlottesville, has never been fond of Patrice. She called me and said, I saw your mother pull that chair, and I almost threw my dinner roll at her. I nearly choked on my coffee. Lorraine is 5'2" with arthritis, but I believe she meant it. Then she said something that stayed with me. She said, your mother doesn't dislike Oliver. She resents that you built your life on your own. You didn't need her approval, and she can't accept that. So she directs that frustration toward a 4-year-old because he was the easiest target. That realization made me more upset than the chair incident itself. About a week and a half after Thanksgiving, Deanna showed up at my house, unannounced. Oliver was asleep, which was a relief, because what followed wasn't something I wanted him to hear. She walked in, I didn't invite her, and said, we need to talk about the money. So Patrice had shared everything. Of course she had, because the moment I mentioned that $50,000 at the table, the focus shifted. It stopped being about Oliver and became about money. That's what got my mother's attention. Not her grandson, but the money. Kids fall off chairs all the time. He didn't fall. She pulled it. There's a difference. She left and slammed my door so hard the wreath fell off. About 20 minutes later, I received a message from my mother, the first direct one since Thanksgiving. I'm very disappointed in how you're treating your sister. Not an apology, not a question about Oliver, just disappointment in me for setting a boundary. Now this is where things begin to shift, so pay attention. 2 days later, my dad drove to my house. He called ahead because that's who he is. He arrived with animal crackers for Oliver and a toolbox because he noticed my porch railing was loose. That's how he shows care, by fixing things. While Oliver sat on the porch eating crackers, Jean told me what had happened at home. After everyone left on Thanksgiving night, he confronted my mother, not lightly, but directly. He told her, "What you did to that child was wrong. What you've been doing to Brooke for years is also wrong, and I allowed it because I told myself it wasn't my place. That ends now." Patrice responded with her usual pattern: denial, tears, and guilt. She said he was being influenced and that I was using money against them. My dad replied, "She earned every dollar herself. She doesn't owe us anything. And if you believe your grandson deserves less because Brooke made her own choices, then you need to reflect on that." Jean, 64, quiet, routine-focused Jean, said what no one in our family had ever said to Patrice. She didn't accept it well. She slept in the guest room for 3 nights, called Craig, called Deanna for support, and formed a small alliance against my dad. And Jean carried on as usual, fixed the faucet, raked leaves, watched football. Then something unexpected happened. My cousin Farah, Uncle Mitch's daughter who lives in Norfolk, called me. She said, "Brooke, I need to tell you something." Apparently, my mother and Deanna had been contacting family members and sharing a completely different version of events. In their version, Oliver was disruptive, climbed into the wrong seat, slipped on his own, and I overreacted and left. They rewrote everything. But Farah was there, she saw it all, and told me she had already corrected several people. I appreciated that more than I can say. So at that point, my mother was reshaping the story, my sister was supporting it, part of the family was confused, and my dad was quietly addressing things at home, while I sat in my living room watching everything unfold and deciding what to do next. The decision about the money was already made, not a cent. The bigger question was whether I should continue trying with this family at all, or if it was time to build a life where my son never questions his place. What I chose surprised even me, because it wasn't what anyone expected, not my mom, not Deanna, not even my dad. And what followed changed everything. I'll explain that shortly. Here's what I decided. I chose to stop fighting, not in the way my mother expected. I wasn't going to apologize. I decided to stop trying to earn a place in a family that didn't make space for my son. That was final. I called my dad and said, "I love you and I always will, but I'm stepping back from Mom, from Deanna, from the holidays, and from the group chat. I need to focus on Oliver." And Jean said, "I understand, Brookie, but I'm not losing my grandson. I'll come to you." That's why I say he's one of the strongest people I know. When December came, for the first time in my life, I didn't go to my parents' house for Christmas. Oliver and I had our own celebration. We made pancakes shaped like candy canes, though they didn't quite look right, and opened presents in our pajamas. Jean came over in the afternoon with a toy truck that was far too big for my living room, but Oliver loved it and even slept next to it. It was the most peaceful holiday I've ever had. And that says a lot, because peace shouldn't feel unusual, but for me, it did. On the other side, my mother was not reflective. She was upset. She told everyone I was punishing her, influencing Jean, and acting selfishly. Deanna supported that view. But situations built on misrepresentation don't last. The truth eventually becomes clear. Farah continued correcting people who had been at that dinner. Even my cousin Derek, who initially criticized me, later apologized in mid-December.
My Aunt Lorraine called Patrice directly and said, "Fix this or you'll lose her." Patrice ended the call. In January, Deanna contacted me again. "Mom is planning a small dinner, just family. She wants